The dog didn't growl. That was the first thing Deputy Aaron Kessler would remember later, the silence. A full-grown German shepherd stood in the middle of the abandoned Miller Farm Road, chest heaving, rain soaking through his thick black and tan coat. No collar. No tags. Just eyes that didn't blink when the cruiser's headlights cut through the fog. Aaron stepped out, boots sinking into wet gravel, already annoyed at another stray call in a town that barely slept as it was. He reached for the dog's collar that wasn't there. And then he saw what the animal was standing over. He never touched the dog again. If you appreciate slow-burning thrillers rooted in atmosphere and character rather than cheap shocks, stay with this one. The truth in Briar Hollow unfolds carefully, and nothing revealed comes without a cost. The call came in at 5:12 a.m., just before sunrise smeared pale light across the hills of Briar Hollow. "Loose aggressive dog on County Road 17, dispatch said through static. Blocking the road near the old Miller property." Aaron Kessler rubbed sleep from his eyes and muttered something under his breath. Briar Hollow didn't have much, 2 diners, 1 gas station, a failing lumber mill, but it had plenty of strays. People dumped things out here when they didn't want responsibility anymore. He'd seen worse. Still, something in the dispatcher's voice had carried an edge. Not fear. Just hesitation. By the time he pulled up, fog had swallowed the lower fields. The Miller property sat abandoned for nearly 15 years, its barn sagging inward like a tired spine. The farmhouse windows were hollow sockets, and in the middle of the narrow road stood the dog. Big, muscled, steady. The shepherd didn't bark, didn't lunge, just stood there, legs braced, as if guarding something. Aaron stepped out slowly, keeping his tone even. "Hey, buddy." The dog's ears twitched. "You're a long way from home." He approached carefully. The animal didn't retreat, didn't bare teeth, but its body shifted, blocking Aaron's view of whatever lay behind it. That was when Aaron noticed the smell. Iron. Wet earth. Something metallic beneath the rain. His pulse slowed in that strange way it did before a bad call. He moved left. The dog moved left. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. "Okay," Aaron murmured. "What are you protecting?" He tried once to step forward quickly, testing the animal's reaction. The shepherd let out a low, vibrating growl, not loud, but deep enough to settle into Aaron's ribs. Then the dog did something unexpected. It stepped aside. Not fully. Just enough. Aaron's stomach tightened. A boot lay in the mud. A woman's boot. And beneath it, a hand, half buried in the ditch. Aaron's breath stalled. He stepped closer, heart pounding in his ears. The body was partially covered by wet soil and leaves, as if someone had tried to rush the job. A woman, mid-30s maybe. Dark hair plastered across her face. Skin pale against the dirt. The shepherd stood over her head. Guarding. Not attacking. Guarding. Aaron crouched slowly. He checked for a pulse, even though he already knew. Cold. Too cold. Rain gathered on her eyelashes and slid down like tears. "Jesus," he whispered. The dog sat down beside her. Not possessive. Not feral. Just loyal. Sheriff Daniel Mercer arrived 15 minutes later, truck tires crunching gravel. Daniel had been sheriff for 20 years. He moved slower than he used to, arthritis chewing at his knees, but his eyes were sharp. He took in the scene without speaking. "ID?" he asked. "Not yet," Aaron said. "Looks like she's been here overnight. Maybe longer." Daniel glanced at the dog. "Yours?" "No." The shepherd watched Daniel carefully. Measuring. Daniel crouched near the body. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Call it in. Get forensics from Pine County. And animal control." Aaron hesitated. "He's not aggressive." Daniel looked at the dog again. "He's standing over a corpse, Aaron. Protecting it." "That's worse." Aaron didn't argue. But something about the dog unsettled him, not in a dangerous way. In a human way. The shepherd leaned closer to the woman's face, nose brushing her hair. Aaron felt something twist inside his chest. By noon, Briar Hollow was buzzing. The body was identified by mid-afternoon. Emily Harper, 34. Local schoolteacher. Missing for 2 days. Her husband, Luke Harper, arrived at the scene just before they transported her body. He stumbled out of his truck, eyes wild. "That's her truck down there," he demanded. Aaron stepped forward. "Mr. Harper, where is she?" Daniel approached instead. Controlled. "She's been found." Luke's eyes flicked past them. "To the stretcher. The sheet." He made a sound that didn't belong to language. Then he saw the dog. "That's her dog," Luke whispered. Aaron blinked. "You're sure?" "Ranger," Luke said hoarsely. "We got him 3 years ago." The shepherd's ears perked at the name. Ranger. Luke moved toward him, but Ranger didn't run to him. Didn't wag. Just watched. "You stupid animal," Luke muttered through tears. "Why didn't you bring her home?" The words hung in the air. Aaron felt Daniel's eyes shift, just slightly, toward Luke. A flicker. Not suspicion. Not yet. Just something filed away. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the way Ranger had stepped aside, as if allowing him to look, as if the dog had wanted the body found. He drove past the Harper house just after midnight. Lights were on, silhouettes moving inside. Grief had a shape, a rhythm. He'd seen it before, but something about Luke Harper's face earlier, beneath the devastation, hadn't aligned. Aaron hated that instinct. It made him feel disloyal. Still, he circled back toward Miller Farm. The road was empty now. Police tape fluttered in damp wind. He killed his engine and stepped out. And that was when he saw the figure near the tree line. Standing still, watching the farmhouse. Aaron's hand drifted to his sidearm. "Sheriff," he called softly. The figure stepped into partial moonlight. It wasn't Daniel. It was Ranger. The dog had returned. Alone. And this time, he wasn't guarding the ditch. He was staring toward the Miller barn. Unmoving. As if something, or someone, was still there. Aaron swallowed. "Okay," he whispered. "What did we miss?" The barn door creaked in the wind. Or maybe it hadn't been the wind. The barn door wasn't swinging in the wind. It was opening. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just enough to break the symmetry of shadow and moonlight. Aaron froze beside his cruiser, every sense narrowing to the thin slice of darkness beyond the doorframe. Ranger stood 20 yards ahead, body rigid, ears forward, tail level, not wagging, not tucked. Focused. "Aaron," he muttered to himself. "You're alone." He stepped back toward his cruiser and keyed the radio low. "Dispatch, this is Kessler. I'm back at Miller property. Possible movement inside the barn. Requesting Sheriff Mercer." Static crackled. "Copy. Mercer's en route." Aaron drew his flashlight and moved slowly toward Ranger. The dog didn't acknowledge him this time. He was staring into the barn. "Easy," Aaron whispered, unsure whether he meant the dog or himself. The barn smelled like old hay and rot. Rainwater dripped through broken slats in the roof, tapping against warped wood in uneven rhythm. The beam of Aaron's flashlight cut across rusted tools, collapsed feed bins, and a ladder leaning at a crooked angle. Nothing moved. The door had shifted maybe 6 inches. That was it. He exhaled slowly. "Wind," he murmured. But Ranger stepped forward. One paw at a time. Aaron followed. Halfway inside, Ranger veered left, toward a stack of hay bales in the far corner. Aaron's beam caught something odd, disturbed dust. A faint drag mark in the dirt floor. Fresh. His pulse ticked upward. He circled the bales. And then he saw it. A patch of ground darker than the rest. Not mud. Not shadow. Recently turned soil. Aaron crouched. Pressed his fingers into it. Still soft. His stomach tightened. "Dispatch," he said, voice low but steady. "I need forensics back out here. Immediately." Sheriff Daniel Mercer arrived within minutes, boots crunching over gravel as he entered the barn. He took one look at Aaron's face and didn't ask unnecessary questions. "What is it?" Aaron stepped aside and pointed. Daniel stared at the disturbed patch of earth. then at Ranger. The dog was sitting now, silent, watching both men. "You think he led you back here?" Daniel asked quietly. "Yes." Daniel inhaled through his nose. "Get the perimeter locked down." They dug carefully, not with full excavation equipment at first, just shovels from the cruiser and steady hands. Aaron hated the sound soil made when it struck something solid that wasn't stone. The first hit was soft. Cloth. Then a smell, stronger than before. Daniel stopped digging. They both knew. It wasn't just Emily Harper. When forensics returned at 2:17 a.m., floodlights turned the barn interior into a harsh stage. They uncovered a second body. Male. Mid-40s. Blunt force trauma to the skull. Decomposition more advanced than Emily's. "He's been here longer," the forensic tech muttered. Daniel's jaw flexed. Aaron glanced at Ranger. The dog didn't look at the new body. He was staring at the barn door, as if the story wasn't finished. By morning, identification came through. The second body was Thomas Grady, a local contractor, reported missing 8 months earlier. Unsolved. Aaron felt the weight of it settle in his chest. 2 bodies, 1 location, and a dog who had refused to leave. Luke Harper was brought in again. This time, not just as a grieving husband. He sat across from Daniel in the small interrogation room, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles blanched. "I already told you," Luke said, voice hoarse. "Emily left Tuesday afternoon. She said she was meeting someone about a tutoring job." "Who?" Daniel asked evenly. "She didn't say." Daniel slid a photograph across the table. "Thomas Grady. Did you know him?" Luke's eyes flickered, just slightly, before settling back into sorrow. "Small town," he said. "Everybody knows everybody." "That's not what I asked." Luke swallowed. "He did some repairs at our place last year." Aaron, standing in the corner, watched the micro-expressions. The delayed blink. The tension in Luke's jaw. Grief was messy, but this felt curated. "Did your wife ever mention meeting him recently?" Daniel pressed. "No." Daniel leaned back. "Your dog led my deputy to Grady's body." Silence. Luke's throat moved. "Rangers trained. He used to do search and rescue with a volunteer team before we adopted him." Aaron and Daniel exchanged a look. "Why didn't you mention that yesterday?" Aaron asked. Luke's eyes snapped to him. "I just buried my wife." The anger felt real, but something beneath it didn't. That evening, Aaron sat in his cruiser outside the Harper home again. Ranger was in the backyard, tied to a post. Not inside. Not with Luke. The dog paced. Restless. Aaron stepped out and approached the fence. "Hey!" he called softly. Ranger stopped pacing. He walked toward Aaron slowly. Not aggressively. Not joyfully either. Just cautiously. Aaron crouched. "Did you try to show him?" he murmured. "Did you try to show Luke what was out there?" Ranger's ears twitched. Inside the house, lights flicked off one by one. Aaron noticed something then. A second vehicle parked behind the garage. Not there earlier. He stood slowly. Moments later, the back door opened. A woman stepped out. Mid-30s. Dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She looked around carefully before moving toward the garage. Aaron stayed in shadow. The woman unlocked the second vehicle. A gray sedan. She opened the trunk. Removed something wrapped in plastic. Small. Box-shaped. She moved quickly toward the house. Aaron's pulse climbed. He snapped a photo discreetly with his phone. The woman paused suddenly. Looked directly toward the darkness where he stood. Aaron didn't move. After a long beat, she went inside. He waited 5 minutes before calling Daniel. "I think Luke's not alone," Aaron said quietly. The woman's name was Claire Donovan. Out of town. Listed as a family friend. No official address tied to Briar Hollow. No clear employment record. Daniel frowned at the file. "She arrived 2 days before Emily went missing," Aaron added. Daniel rubbed his temples. "And you're just now telling me? I didn't know until tonight." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Bring Luke in again. And this time, bring the friend." The next interrogation wasn't as controlled. Claire sat straight-backed, eyes cool and steady. Luke looked exhausted. "Claire is a consultant," Luke said quickly. "She's helping with estate planning." "Your wife's been dead for less than 48 hours, Daniel replied evenly. "That's fast planning." Claire didn't blink. "Emily and Luke were separated," she said calmly. Erin's head snapped up. Luke shot her a sharp look. "That's not relevant," Luke muttered. "It is now," Daniel said. Claire folded her hands. They were having difficulties. Financial strain. Emotional strain. "Affair?" Erin asked. Silence. Claire's lips curved faintly. "You're reaching." Daniel leaned forward. "Did you know Thomas Grady?" Claire's eyes flickered for the first time. "Just a fraction." "No." Erin slid a photo of the barn excavation across the table. She stared at it. Her breathing changed. Barely. But enough. Outside, Ranger barked suddenly. Sharp. Urgent. All three in the room flinched. Erin felt something click into place. The dog wasn't reacting to strangers. He was reacting to lies. Later that night, Daniel pulled Erin aside. "You're thinking Luke killed Grady," Daniel said quietly. "I think Grady knew something," Erin replied. "And I think Emily found out." Daniel studied him. "And Claire? Complication?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Or catalyst?" They stood in silence for a moment. Then Daniel said something that surprised Erin. "I'm not convinced Luke did it alone." Erin frowned. "You think Claire helped?" Daniel shook his head slightly. "I think we're missing someone." At 3:40 a.m., the call came. Fire at the Harper residence. Erin's stomach dropped. By the time they arrived, flames had already consumed half the structure. Firefighters battled the blaze while smoke billowed into the black sky. Luke stood outside in handcuffs. Claire was nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" Erin demanded. Luke's face was streaked with soot. "She left." "When?" "Before the fire." "Why?" Luke's voice broke. "She said it was necessary." "For what?" Luke looked at him then. And for the first time, there was no performance. No curated grief. Just raw fear. "She said the dog remembered." Erin's skin went cold. Ranger stood near the patrol car, leash secured. He wasn't barking. He wasn't panicking. He was staring at the burning house, as if watching evidence disappear, or waiting for something else to surface. When firefighters finally cleared the interior, they found something unexpected. In the basement, behind a false wall, a third body. Female. Older. Estimated time of death, over a year ago. Briar Hollow didn't have many missing persons, but it had one. Margaret Doyle. Former town council member. Outspoken. Investigating misuse of county funds before she vanished. Daniel stared at the remains in silence. Erin felt the weight of the town pressing inward. 3 bodies. 1 property. 1 husband. 1 consultant who vanished before the flames. And a dog who had tried to protect the truth from the beginning. Daniel looked at Erin. "Find Claire," he said quietly. "And this time, follow the dog." Claire Donovan didn't take the highway out of Briar Hollow. Erin knew that before the state alert even came through. People who ran because they were scared chose the fastest route. People who ran because they were calculating chose the quietest. He stood beside his cruiser at dawn, cold light flattening the burned skeleton of the Harper house behind him. Ranger sat in the back seat, unusually calm, watching through the glass. "She said the dog remembered." Luke's words had kept Erin awake through the night. Dogs didn't testify. They didn't write statements. But they remembered patterns, smells, places. And Ranger had already shown them 2 graves. Erin opened the rear door. "Okay," he murmured. Ranger stepped out. No leash this time. Daniel watched from a few yards away. "You're serious about this," the sheriff said.
Yes.
"You're staking a homicide investigation on instinct." Aaron met his gaze.
On behavior.
Daniel hesitated, then nodded once.
Go.
Ranger didn't head toward the road. He moved along the back tree line, nose low, body tense but controlled. Aaron followed at a careful distance, heart steady but alert. The forest behind the Harper property sloped downward toward an old logging trail that hadn't been used in years. The ground there was damp, layered with pine needles and the faint rot of forgotten seasons. Halfway down the incline, Ranger stopped. He turned back once, just enough to confirm Aaron was there. Then he continued. They reached the logging trail within minutes. And that's when Aaron saw it. Tire tracks. Fresh. Not from emergency vehicles. Narrower. A sedan. He crouched, running his fingers along the edges. The soil was compressed but not fully settled. Recent. Ranger moved again, following the tracks rather than crossing them. Aaron's pulse sharpened. The trail led deeper into state-owned land, a section once used for timber but now abandoned after budget cuts. No regular patrols. No cameras. A perfect place to disappear. Or to finish something. The trail curved sharply around a rock outcropping. Ranger froze. Ears forward. Low growl vibrating in his chest. Aaron's hand drifted to his weapon. Then he heard it. A car door slamming. He moved fast around the bend. Claire stood beside the gray sedan. A shovel lay on the ground. The trunk was open. And inside, gas cans, plastic sheeting, and a duffel bag. Claire didn't run. She stared at Aaron with an expression that wasn't panic. It was irritation. "You're persistent," she said. Aaron kept his weapon trained but lowered. "Step away from the vehicle." She sighed softly. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this." Ranger stepped forward beside Aaron. Claire's eyes flicked to the dog. And for the first time, something like fear surfaced. "He won't leave it alone," she said quietly. "What?" Aaron asked. "Memory." The word hung between them. Backup arrived quickly. Daniel stepped out, taking in the scene with measured calm. Claire was cuffed without resistance. Inside the duffel bag they found files. Documents. Flash drives. County budget records. Names. Signatures. Daniel's face hardened as he flipped through pages. Margaret Doyle's handwriting marked several entries. Notes about misallocated funds. Construction contracts. Thomas Grady's company listed repeatedly. Daniel closed the folder slowly. "Grady was skimming," he said. Claire tilted her head. "Everyone was skimming." Aaron looked at her sharply. "Everyone?" She smiled faintly. "Small towns don't run on innocence, Deputy." Interrogation began before noon. This time Claire didn't posture. She sat back, ankles crossed, fingers resting lightly on the table. "You're going to blame Luke," she said calmly. "That's the easiest path." "Did he kill them?" Daniel asked. She shrugged. "He killed one." Silence. Aaron leaned forward. "Which one?" "Grady." The room tightened. "Why?" Aaron pressed. "Because Grady panicked," Claire replied. Margaret started digging into county finances. She was going to expose everything. "Everything," Daniel repeated. Claire's gaze met his. Funds rerouted. Contracts inflated. Donations exchanged for zoning approvals. Daniel's jaw set. "And you?" he asked. "I'm an auditor," she said. "I clean up messes." Aaron's voice hardened. "By burying bodies?" "No," Claire said softly. "By controlling narratives." She leaned forward slightly. Margaret was the problem. Grady handled it poorly. He panicked after. Luke confronted him. Things escalated. "And Emily?" Aaron asked. For the first time, Claire's expression shifted. Not guilt. Regret. "Emily found the ledger," she said quietly. She was smarter than Luke gave her credit for. Luke had skimmed funds through minor contracts, siphoning small amounts for years. Enough to stay unnoticed. Until Margaret Doyle noticed. Until Grady panicked. Until blood entered the equation. Emily had discovered irregular transfers in their own household accounts. She confronted Luke. He denied it. Claire was brought in to stabilize the damage. But Emily didn't stay quiet. She threatened to go to the sheriff, Claire said. Luke didn't believe she would. Erin's chest tightened. But she did, Daniel said. Claire shook her head. She drove out to the Miller property to meet Grady. She thought he'd help her. Erin felt the pieces locking together. And Luke followed. Claire nodded once. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. What wasn't? The second blow. The room fell silent. Luke hadn't intended to kill Emily. He'd confronted her at the barn. She'd refused to back down. Ranger had been with her. The dog witnessed everything. After Luke struck her, Ranger lunged. Grady tried to intervene. Chaos. Blood. Claire arrived later to contain the damage. Margaret had already been buried in the basement months before. Grady went into the barn floor. Emily into the ditch. But Ranger wouldn't leave. He kept returning, Claire said. Luke tried to confine him. But the dog always went back. Because dogs didn't understand cover-ups. They understood loss. Luke confessed that evening. Not dramatically. Not tearfully. Just exhausted. I didn't mean to kill her, he said over and over. Daniel watched him with something close to pity. Intent mattered in court. But outcome mattered more in memory. Claire's involvement was more complex. She hadn't struck anyone. She hadn't planned the first murder. But she orchestrated concealment. She coached Luke. She advised on fire as a reset. She underestimated one variable. Ranger. 2 weeks later, Briar Hollow felt quieter. Not peaceful. Just stripped. County investigations widened. Daniel's name appeared in early audit trails, not as a thief, but as someone who had signed off without digging deep enough. He spent long hours alone in his office after that. Moral complexity settled heavily in small towns. No one was fully innocent. But not everyone was fully corrupt either. Erin stood outside the temporary animal shelter one afternoon. Ranger sat calmly behind the gate. The dog had no one left. Luke was awaiting trial. Emily's parents lived 3 states away. Erin knelt. You did your job, he said softly. Ranger's ears flicked. You didn't let her disappear. The dog stepped forward, pressed his head gently against Erin's chest. Not excitement. Not dependency. Just contact. Erin closed his eyes briefly. Months later, the Miller barn was demolished. The Harper house cleared. New grass seeded over scarred earth. Briar Hollow tried to move forward. Daniel resigned quietly before formal charges ever touched his desk. Not because he'd stolen. Because he hadn't looked closely enough. Accountability came in different forms. Erin visited Emily's grave on a cold autumn morning. Ranger sat beside him. The wind moved through yellowing leaves. She trusted someone, Erin said quietly. That's not weakness. Ranger rested his head against Erin's knee. Trust had been broken. Ambition had rotted into greed. Fear had turned to violence. But something else had endured. Loyalty. A dog had refused to abandon truth. Erin stood slowly. Come on, he said. Ranger rose. They walked back toward the cruiser together. The town behind them was quieter now, not because evil had vanished, but because it had been named. And sometimes that was enough.